Holy typographic effects, Batman! You're telling me you're going to start with this normal, everyday comic graphic and make it look like this? Why, that's dynamic! Yes, it's the dynamic duo of both graphics and text together. You must be joking! This is the riddle of the century! How did you do this? Well, it's easy and it's simple. Let's start from the beginning. Going down here, we can see that we have three different items. We have a text layer here, we have an additional text layer here, and finally we have a shapes layer here. So let's start this project by creating this talk bubble. Moving over to my toolbar, I can click here, normally selecting the rectangle tool, which is the default, then moving down to the custom shape tool as you see here. Then as you move up to the options bar, you can select shapes in which to draw with. Clicking on this flyout arrow, I can then drop down to my palette or library of shapes. However, what if I want to expand this number of shapes? By going to this additional flyout arrow here, I can then move down and select Talk Bubbles, a default set, a library of images available to Photoshop CS that you can instantly load just like that. I would like to append them to my existing list. I can then choose one of these shapes, move outside into the options bar and click to hide that library of shapes, and then I can move into the work area. But first, I want to make sure I'm drawing with the correct tool. As you can see over here, there are three different tools. You can fill this with pixels, you can draw a path, or you can draw a shape layer. I'm going to select shape layer. Notice here that the color displays. I want to change the color of my balloon to be white. So I click on that box and then move here within the color picker to select white. Now if I click and drag, I can create the bubble. Don't forget that tip and technique I'm always talking about. Holding down the spacebar key allows you to move this bubble into position, then letting go of the spacebar key, as I'm doing right now, allows you to continue to shape the bubble. So going back and forth between these allows you to position and shape all at the same time, another dynamic duo. You then let go and it reveals itself. Now in this case, I already have a bubble. Let's reveal that bubble here by turning on its visibility. My next step is to stroke the edge of this graphic. Remember, this graphic is not just pixels. If I target this layer, then use my arrow key and click and drag over it, you notice that this is a path which is filled with color. So this is a true Bezier curve path that you can scale in size and not have to worry about resolution. Okay, now you know that. Let's move forward. With this layer still selected, I'm going to double click here, not on the name, but in the blue space, the empty space near the name, to reveal the layer style dialog. I'd like to stroke this by clicking on the word stroke here at the base, then changing the color here by clicking on this tab, moving to black because that's the stroke color I'm looking for this graphic. Click OK. My size is currently highlighted. I can move the slider here, or I can use the arrow keys, my favorite, to just nudge this up to 7, just like that. Then I click OK. So that's step number 1, adding a layer style of a stroke to that graphic. Now let's turn on the wow here. Now, we want this wow to have a similar graphic effect as the bubble. Let's move over here and target the layer here. Then let's move it up into this region and let's add this effect. I want this to be simple and straightforward, not too complex, and I definitely don't want to add more layers. Let's go back here to those layer styles. Let's double click again in the area beyond the name, revealing the layer style for that layer. In this case, let's run a stroke around the edge, select here for the color, but this time let's set the color as white and click OK. We want this to be on the outside, normal, opacity is 100%, but we want the size a bit bigger. Again, I'm using my arrow keys because I like using the arrow keys, but you can use the slider if you want to. But since it's selected and highlighted, I can bring this up in size and increase this size. Let's go all the way up to, say, 16. That's a nice look. And then let's move to the next step. I wanted a black line on the outside of the white stroke. Now, it took years to discover this, but if you want something to be on the outside of a stroke, you can use a glow. So you select glow. Then you select over here to change the color of the glow, in this case to be black. And then I click OK. And since it's black, we want to set this to normal. Now we don't see it yet, but you soon will. Check this out. Set this to normal. Set the opacity to 100%. Move down here to the technique under elements, and you want it to be precise in this case. I'm not looking for a soft edge, I'm looking for a hard edge graphic line around it. The spread, in this case, the spread should be all the way set to 100. And now the size comes into play. Selecting the size and start to move this out. You can see we have a nice graphic technique taking effect here. 23 looks perfect. I'm going to zoom in, since I can zoom in, with the Command spacebar or Control spacebar. Clicking and dragging, I can zoom while the layer style dialog is still open. Then selecting the spacebar only, I can move this into position and see how the widths of the lines compare. That looks pretty good, but the last thing I want to do is select Anti-Aliased here. And the range looks perfect. 50 seems to work just fine. I'm looking for the characteristics of the edge of the black to resemble the characteristics of the stroke on the bubble. Let's click OK and double click on our hand tool. Now, as I select the Move tool and I make sure I have the Wow layer targeted, notice as I move this into position, it looks pretty interesting, but wouldn't it be much more interesting if the two blended together? And again, I don't want this to be too complicated. I was looking for something simple. I want them to blend into each other. Let's turn on our Dr. Brown layer here to add to this effect. Now, going over here to the Wow layer, let's double click on the layer one last time to reveal the layer style. Now, hold on to your bat belts. Here we go. Let's move this down. When you see this, you won't believe it. I'm selecting Outer Glow. I want this to be treated differently as it blends into the layers below it. Now, how do you blend layers and specially focus in on different colors within the layer? Well, then you use a blend mode. It just so happens that if you go down here to Color Burn, notice I'm setting Color Burn for the outer glow. Poof. Did you see that? It's gone. I click OK. I can then move this into position, and it seems to then blend in no matter where I go. It then blends in, and the black line around the edge of the graphic seems to continue and flow around the entire graphic, merely by setting the mode for the outer glow, the black glow, to Color Burn. That's amazing. But wait, do you think it's possible that you could actually edit this text? Why, yes, you can. You can edit this text very easily, and all of the style is retained. Okay, moving on to our next technique. That involves our background gradient, which I'm selecting here on layer number 1. I want to convert this gradient into that comic halftone effect. It's easy, it's simple, it's super! From the Filters menu down to Pixelate and over to Color Halftone. Now the defaults, based on pre-press processing, will angle each of the colors at these corresponding degrees. If I click OK, you can see the results. It's interesting, but too complex. So with a simple undo, let's try this again. Let's go up to Filter, down to Pixelate, and over to Color Halftone once again. This time, Dr. Brown recommends that you enter in a similar value for all 4 of the angles. Why, this is interesting. He hits the Tab key to move to the next box, Tab key, and goes through each one of these and puts in the same angle. I'm going to leave the radius at 8. That was pretty darn good. Clicking OK, and this time, won't you agree? Much nicer, much simpler, much more graphic and dynamic. But wait, there's something wrong. Our black line has disappeared around the edge of the word wow. Let's just double check that. Before and after. So what happened? With every super graphic, there is a weakness. Yes, in this case, since we set that to color burn, it's burning through our background. How do we solve this? When in doubt, put things together in a layer set. This is how it works. I'm going to target this graphic. In this case, it's just one of the 3 graphics which make up my text bubble. I then am going to group the others here, clicking on the link between them. Right? I've linked all the layers which represent everything but the background. Then, from the flyout arrow here within the Layers palette, I would like to create a new set from linked. Now watch carefully. The black line around the word wow will reappear. Well, after I name it and select normal. Okay, let's all get excited again. Now, when I click OK, the black line will reappear. There. So within this set, and setting the attributes for this set to normal instead of pass-through, I then contain the effects of that color burn are within that shape only and do not pass beyond the borders of the layer set. You're saying to yourself, I like what I see here, but I'd like to apply it to other graphics quickly and easily. Well, that's simple. Let's open back up this layer set we created earlier. Let's target the word wow. We like what's happening on the word wow. We'd like to save that. Well, that's simple. We can save this as a style. With wow selected, I merely move down here into my Styles palette. Notice that the bucket tool appears as I move beyond the names. Then when I click, I can create a new style. We're going to call this Wow Text Style. Just like this. And click OK. You've done it. You have saved that technique as a style. The same is true here for our bubble text. Selecting the bubble, moving down into our Styles palette, clicking, let's call this Bubble Text Style. And click OK. Of course you know, in order to apply these styles that you've just created, you simply draw your shape, then select the style from the Styles palette, and those attributes will be applied to that shape. Now you know. So there you have it. You're done. You've gone from normal, everyday, wimpy text to powerful typographic effects for your next comic book adventure.